So we will be exploiting all the learnings that we had so far about engineering value, and we can apply technology, processes and such into delivering the functions that create value. If there's inefficiencies in the ecosystem, and we can have a nice value proposition generated, and we also, as a third component, can create a systemic business model which self-generates its own success from previous success and without any bottlenecks. Maybe we actually have somewhat of a unicorn potential there. So all these conceptual insights are very useful, and there's the base for building an impact project. So the topic will be today how we generate growth, stimulate growth. So we need to get that growth model going. The growth engine needs to be started and kept fueled. And unfortunately, you build a growth engine, the fuel to some extent is yourself. You have to work really hard. But then growth also occurs, and when growth occurs, new problems arise. More on the growth management, what do we need to do to handle the growth and avoid creating unnecessary problems. Of course, opportunity requires both that there's a demand, boils down to needs and an ability and willingness to pay. It doesn't have to be the customer that pays. Maybe you can find some other actor that is willing to pay or some other source of revenues. And then, of course, the possibility side needs to be meeting the needs at the price level where people are willing to pay without it becoming completely unprofitable for you. You can have a non-profit project, of course, but often you at least need to have some surplus of revenues, at least to develop it and maintain it over time and expand and so on. Okay, and we also saw that creating a good, exponentially growing, systemic business model, well, that systemic element of the business model takes place in an effect level, effects that fit together and reinforce each other and connects to the adjacent ecosystem conditions in a way that either drives the whole thing, or we can source things from the adjacent environment into our value network. That's the repetition. Now, growth. How do we understand growth? Well, growth is not just one thing. I think this is fairly well illustrated about this dialogue that I saw about a new company formed in northern Sweden. And there was this politician who was very positive and enthusiastic about new jobs coming into the region, asking the entrepreneur, well, how many new jobs is this business of yours going to create? And the answer was as few as possible, right? All right, so, but don't entrepreneurs want to grow? Yes, but growth is multidimensional. If you separate growth into different types of growth, you get a much better understanding of what you need to do, because the priorities are different. So essentially, at least you should divide it up in business growth. Business growth is about the money, especially at the top line. You can think about the bottom line, but bottom lines have other factors that come in. You can think about the number of customers or the volume or something like that. But I think business growth, I think the top line or the revenues is the best indicator. Then we have organizational growth. That is the number of people you need to have to create the revenues. And unfortunately, let's say, there is a connection here. If I want to make more money, I have to have more people. So with that comes complexity, responsibilities. People are very expensive. It's the most expensive assets probably that we will need. Not always, but nearly always. People get sick. People quit. They make mistakes. If you separate at least these two types of growth, we can work on these two fronts with some sort of method to it, with some sort of ideas and approaches and strategies. Okay, but they are connected. The idea now is to break the dependency as much as we can between organizational growth and business growth. So one company might be needing a lot of growth in terms of the organization to deliver value, but the business size grows much more slowly compared to something that would be more of a platform that just shoots out value. Then there's a huge difference. And it all depends on how you set up solutions and processes, those parts of the value model. Lean processes, solutions that are automatized in terms of software and hardware rather than persons being engaged in the processes and activities. We talked about this, that some types of ways to create value are much more asset heavy than others. How does it come back to the business model? Well, this comes back to the idea also reflected in the blue ocean strategy thinking. Instead of being on the same performance curve as the current players and looking at each of these functions or purchasing criterias, often increasing performance levels also increases the costs. Where you often have a high utility, the high end here, it costs a lot to get better quality, or you can get not so good quality for a lower cost. But if you do something really different, then you can move to another utility curve. Maybe you can do something really high utility, like creating the Tesla or something like that. Or you can do something that's really low cost. But the whole curve, the whole value frontier is moved from the trade-offs of today by using new technology or by using a new business model or by using both together in combination. So that's why we say you have to start with the business model. You have to do it differently to be reaching that radical difference in value needed for a disruptive potential.